What's up, guys? It's your boys Taylor coming back at you with another episode of the Empirical Scouting Podcast. We've given our thoughts on some of the quarterbacks in this year's class, as well as given our thoughts on some of the edge rushers in this year's draft class. But now we're bringing it back over to the offensive side of the ball and hitting on arguably the deepest position in this class, the wide receiver position. If you missed the episodes before, I'd highly suggest you going back and listen to them. Some good stuff, some good ideas, and actually some things that we kind of mentioned on that are starting to come up and more on like social media and stuff. So it's pretty cool to see that, we might have been quote unquote early on it. Before we get going, Taylor, it's been like 2 weeks. What's up? How's life over there?
Life's busy. Wife's pregnant. Wife's on semi-bed rest.
Yeah.
Have a new puppy in the house. Thanks. And being told I have to work more hours at work. So, it's a lot. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we've talked about that obviously separately. And I think that's kind of crazy what you've been going through with work. But yeah, I mean, it's going well over here as well. We just got back from a snowboarding trip over in Aspen. That was interesting. It was very, very frustrating. I haven't gone snowboarding since like sophomore year of college, maybe. So it's been a minute, and it's not like
we're riding a bike. Snowboarding in Aspen. I've been to Breck. Haven't been to Aspen. I've heard Aspen's for the nice. Rich people. So
Yeah, I mean maybe. It wasn't on my dime, but no, it's definitely the more rich area. It's also like harder slopes apparently over in Aspen. Apparently Breckenridge and Vale, I want to say, are a little bit easier. But yeah, his first day I took some lessons. They took us out on like a bigger slope, and it was not pretty. But then second day we just, me and the wife just kind of hit it going, and it was interesting. But after about like one or two runs, I actually stood up for a lot of it. Obviously, I'm still gonna fall, so it was fun. It was definitely fun. By the last day, though, I was getting the groove of it. Still couldn't go down anything very steep without like, I forgot what they call it, like a flying leaf thing, and just floating down. But I would be standing up, so it was. They didn't really have any greens, so it was a lot of blues. So I'd just skip a step and just start going on blues.
That's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard. Yeah, it's a hard activity unless you've done it before and know what you're doing, because you use muscles that you've never used in your life.
Oh yeah, my neck's sore, my arm's sore, even still today. It's definitely rough. But yeah, some enough chit chat. So let's just dive right into the wide receiver position. We'll start it off with a guy that everyone knows. A lot of people watched his father play in the NFL, which is Marvin Harrison Jr., two-time consensus All-American, Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, and most recent Biletnikoff winner. I disagree with that one, but he was the winner of that. In 3 years as a Buckeye, totaled 2,600 yards and 31 touchdowns, added 58 and a touchdown on the ground. At the combine, he measured decently well. I had it up before. I don't have it up right now, so let me bring that up.
I got it. Measured exactly 6'3", 209, 31 7/8 arm length with 9.5-inch hands. All decent measurements, within nothing alarmingly small or undersized there. Has not tested in terms of athleticism, and I believe he said he's not going to do that in the process. So we're not going to get an RAS for him. We're not going to get a 40 or anything like that. Now, that being said, the last bullet point on the positives, he has been clocked at a verified speed of 22.2 miles per hour in game, which is pretty good. That's pretty high relative to his peers. He has an unverified miles per hour speed of 23, which was Bruce Feldman said that in his Freaks List article prior to the season. I want to say Feldman also had said that Marv reportedly ran in the 4.3s and displayed some freaky, quick agility drill times. But, point being, he's a good athlete. I'm not worried about his athleticism at all. I don't think anybody else should be worried about his athleticism. So that's a box that I feel like it's okay just being checked without the testing numbers. Now, actually digging into like who he is as a player, the guy's ball skills are elite. He has some of the best ball tracking and body control you will see from a wide receiver prospect. The guy will make catches over defenders, under defenders, around defenders. He'll get his feet in bounds. He contorts his body in ways that are just absolutely freaky for a 6'3" wide receiver. And he is truly a dominant alpha receiver, which is why I labeled him as an alpha receiver for the role. And what I mean by alpha receiver is when I label someone an alpha receiver, I don't do it too often, but what I mean is I think that guy can play the X position, the Z position, and the slot. So X, for reference, is a wide receiver that lines up on the line of scrimmage on the outside of the offense. The Z lines up off the line of scrimmage, and the slot, we all know, lines up, more in towards the quarterback. I think alpha receivers can sufficiently perform in all three of those positions, as well as have an offensive game plan run through them. They can take over games, essentially. For reference, we've seen Jamar Chase be that. We've seen A.J. Brown be that. The guy that always – I'll never forget Terrell Owens when he was on the Eagles. That's the guy that, and Calvin Johnson. Those are the two guys that to me are always the alpha receivers of alpha receivers. But, yeah, you saw Marvin play against UGA last year. And, you may not want to admit it, but
I know where it's going. I know where it's going.
If he doesn't get knocked out, I mean, that game maybe goes a little different. The dude was having a truly special performance that night on the biggest stage.
He's a special receiver.
Yeah.
He is. It's just, like you said, he's an alpha receiver. He's that guy that teams are going to game plan again around him. They're still going to fail to stop him. You can only, maintain him. You can't really stop a guy like Marvin Harrison. He makes those superstar catches. That's one of the biggest things. And it makes everything look so smooth. He looks like an NFL receiver in college. And that's something you don't really see too often. He makes the sideline grabs look easy. He makes the jump balls look easy. He makes just the average, crossing route look easy. And it's just, everything just comes to him so naturally and easily. I mean, when you have a dad like Marvin Harrison, and you're learning the wide receiver position from the second year, born, you should look like that.
It really shows.
It's good. Yeah. And it really does. You could tell he has all those nuances of the receiving position that he just has it. My one takeaway, which looks like your biggest weakness as well, is the yak ability. I was surprised when I was watching some of his film. He doesn't, after the catch isn't really there. And I'm not sure why, because like you said, he's a really good, he didn't test obviously, but he's really athletic. And I think he can do that. But a lot of the passes that he had were sideline passes, deep balls, jump balls, something that's not really setting him up to have that yak ability. So I have it as a negative, but I also believe he could do it. Now, he's not going to be an elite yak, receiver. What's an alpha receiver that had like a Julio Jones? You remember how, Julio Jones could run after the catch really, really well. We know him obviously really well. And I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be that kind of guy.
No, he's not.
He doesn't necessarily have to. You can be an alpha receiver without that yak ability, that speed. He has the speed to run routes and get downfield, get himself open. Plus, obviously, the nuances of the route running abilities, which is phenomenal. But it's just that yards after the catch is just. It was surprising to see that he didn't really. He was going down or out of bounds or for a touchdown every single time he caught the ball.
Yeah, he's not a big yak threat in terms of making the play after the catch. He's not going to break off long gains with breaking tackles and such. Which is why I kind of leaned into the AJ Green comparison, and that's the comparison I gave him pre-season, pre-2023 season. In the summer, and I'm sticking with it. I that's the kind of receiver I see him being. I don't see Jamar Chase, Julio Jones, physical, tough freak guys. I see a really polished route runner that will go up above the rim and make contested catches, acrobatic catches. He can do the yards after catch thing, but it's going to be just what's kind of there already. He's not going to necessarily create that. and I may be speaking out of ignorance when I say this too. Like, I haven't looked at stats. People may hop on it, but like, I've always gotten that impression from like Devontae Adams too. Like, Devontae Adams is an elite possession receiver where he's gonna bring the ball down and catch it reliably and make those contested catches, and he'll get yards afterwards. But it's not necessarily like, juking, spinning, making the play like Julio could do at times, like we've seen
Yeah.
Debo do, guys like that.
He's going to
AJ
take what he
Brown.
can, but he's not going to create. Like, the difference is he's not going to create that yak. He's going to take if it's there. He'll use his speed to, eat up yards and such, but he's not going to necessarily, break a couple tackles, reverse field, juke a guy out, run down the sideline for a touchdown. Like, that's just not who Marvin Harrison Jr. is. He's going to be a guy who, if he's running a deep crossing route and he has the open space, he can beat you around the edge and get to the end zone. But I don't necessarily believe that he's going to be a guy who will end up, being able to break tackles and force missed tackles at the next level. We didn't even see it in college. But again, I don't necessarily think he needs to fulfill how great people believe Marvin Harrison Jr. will be at the next level.
No, not at all. I'm not like, it's his biggest negative, but I'm not worried about it. Like, truthfully,
yeah.
Like, when I say I'm not worried about it, do I expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to be the best wide receiver in football? No, not necessarily. Do I think he has that ceiling? Yes. Do I like elite prospect? He's my number one overall player in the draft, and he's not gonna be beaten. Like, he's gonna stay that, and I fully expect him to be. Part of the reason he is so highly rated for me is because his floor is so high. I think at the absolute worst, you're getting a receiver that you're going to be able to rely on to be a starter, even if he's not a superstar. Like, this guy's going to be a good starter just because of like how polished he is technique wise on so many things.
Yeah, it's just like you said, the floor is so high that I can't even see him not being a wide receiver one on a team throughout his career. Like, he will always be that guy. I just can't personally see anyone else beating him out. But we'll move over to our next guy who, in my opinion, should have won the Blitnikoff Award this past year, being the best receiver in all of college football, and that's going to be Malik Nabers. He was also a consensus All-American this year. 3 years at LSU, he totaled 3,000 yards and 21 touchdowns, most of which came from the last 2 seasons with Jaden Daniels, of course. He did not test, nor has he gotten measured at the combine or since. So it's a little shocking. I don't know how you feel about that. It's a little weird. I don't think anyone's really done all that too much. We've seen not testing before, but not getting measured. That's a little different. So Malik Nabers, just how special can he be?
I'm a big Malik Nabers fan. Look, I know the initial response to some of the talk that Nabers is closer to Marvin than people think or have acted like was met with skepticism and the assumption that it was trying to be a hot take. I don't think it was. I nearly had Malik Nabers rated higher than Marvin. I truly did. I think he's incredibly special, or has the potential to be incredibly special at the next level. The no testing sucks. The no measurement sucks. I would like to see at least what the arm length looks like. I want to know, the testing I'm not as worried about. The measurements are really what I want to know, just for references. But I mean, I had to make the font super small on this guy's report to fit everything I wanted to fit in, which is it's hard. The guy's got crazy good body control. He can go up and make catches. He has elite speed, or elite in-game speed, I should say. He can leverage well. He can separate well. He's actually pretty willing to block more so than a lot of these other prospects in his class. And when you see that, you see him be downfield, and when Jaden's scrambling to his side, he circles back and actually tries to make a block to help the play out, which is nice to see because some other guys don't give that effort. And he's an elite yak threat. we're talking about Marvin's not necessarily that guy, and Nabers is. Nabers, there's a reason so many people compare him to DJ Moore, and it's because DJ Moore, like, always kind of got the label of, like, he turns into a running back when he's got the ball in his hands. Nabers is along those same lines where he breaks tackles, makes people miss, and is a threat to hit a home run anytime he has the ball. And, there's some things he's got to clean up. There's some things I don't love. And those are technical things. But physically and just, he's got things you can't teach, which is what I really care, like what you got to care about. He's very, very good at so many things you can't teach, that the things that he's got to clean up, I don't mind taking that shot on him early to help clean those, and then trying to coach him to clean those up, because I know a lot of guys that do have those things, those techniques down, they're not necessarily going to be able to do the speed and agility and stuff that he does.
Yeah. And it's funny you say, like, you believe that, Malik Nabers is a lot closer to Marvin Harrison than others believe. And I think everyone trusts that they are, the 1-2 of this draft. However, I don't know how to say it without saying I like Malik Nabers more, but they are virtually tied for me.
It's okay. It's like, I like Malik Nabers more too, but
yeah,
I recognize that Marvin's better overall prospect.
Yes. How about that? I want to like Malik Nabers more. Like, I really, really do. Like, I think they're, like, the film grades I have for them are virtually the same.
It's the same thing as the quarterbacks. I like JJ McCarthy better than Drake May, but I can recognize Drake May is a better prospect.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just everything that Malik Nabers did. He made it look so smooth. He gets shot out of a cannon whenever whenever the play starts. He's gone. He eats up yards with ease. It's just beautiful to watch. And, like, kind of like what you have on the screen, I had so many positives and it was hard to find some negatives. My one negative was some of his, like, route running can definitely be a little bit defined more. He uses a lot of that speed, a lot of deep crossing routes, a lot of go routes. So, like, a lot of it sets him up for success because of what he can do, just athletically wise. But I would like to see some more of, like, the route running technician, if that makes sense. I would like to see that a little bit more from Malik, but, like, that's something you can learn, and he can do everything that you can't really just learn. He doesn't really, he's not really, like, a jump ball guy. He's not a contested catch type guy. So, like, but that's just not who he is. Not everyone has to do that.
He can do it,
such an elite.
He can get up pretty well for balls, to be honest.
No, athletically wise too, he can. It's just I didn't see it that often. That wasn't that offense.
But if you're throwing a jump ball to him,
yeah, he could track it. Really
other issues with your offense, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's just I don't want to be like the hot takey guy and say, like, I like Malik Nabers over Marvin Harrison. I think people do that at times to try to sound different, but, like, I want to. I really want to. I can just understand how great of a prospect, like you said, Marvin Harrison is, but Malik Nabers, man, like, that's someone I would be so excited to get on my team if I was a GM or a fan of a team. And some team's going to be extremely happy when they get him because just the things that he can do on the football field are special.
So I want to hit on, what my biggest weakness was, the sideline releases. I'm going to explain that really quick and to make it a little bit easier to understand. So a lot of the times when he's on it doesn't matter if it's the short or wide side of the field. It's more so when he's lined up wider towards the numbers informations and he's running a route that's going to be going towards the sideline. He has this tendency where he doesn't wait and or fully leverage the defensive back to then where he will break to the sideline. So he'll take a couple steps or something like that. He'll try to do a release, and then he'll start going into his route towards the sideline. And the defensive back isn't moved off of it. The defensive back isn't fooled or anything like that. And it usually gives the defensive back the opportunity to close in on him faster on the sideline and leaves him less space to operate. So, one example is you see that great catch he had against Alabama down the sideline, like with one hand, right? That's part of, like, what my issue is. Like, it's a great catch, but it's also why are you doing your releases to where you're allowing the defensive back to recover so easily against you and space you into the sideline, the boundary, to where you're barely having any room to operate? Because he's got the speed to beat this guy deep. You just got to give yourself a little bit more space so that you're not having to make a tiptoe catch or one-handed spectacular catch because you have more. So you have more space. Is all I want.
Yeah, just make it harder on himself. It's something that he doesn't necessarily need to do, but he has that ability. So officially, he's still going to be your number 2 receiver, correct?
Oh yeah,
As it
he's
sits
my number
today.
two,
Okay.
and he's my number 2 overall.
Oh wow. Okay, so you have 2 wide receivers. This is
Yeah,
definitely a special class.
those are
But
my top 2 receiver, like top 2
yeah,
overall players on my entire board, and I don't
interesting. Yeah.
anticipate that changing.
Okay, so I'm happy to hear that you like Malik Nabers just as much as I do then, because he would be extremely high if I put them all together. I don't have the nuances right now to like be able to rate different positions. I just kind of keep it in position wise, but he's definitely my number 2 wide receiver, and I really want to put him at number 1. But we'll make an easy transition over to Malik Nabers, running mate at LSU, and Brian Thomas Jr. 3-year player with the Tigers. He totaled just under 1,900 yards and 24 touchdowns. The crazy thing is that 17 of those touchdowns came within this past season, which also happened to lead the nation. And at the combine, let's see, he's 6'2", which is 77th percentile, 209, which is the 67th percentile. He did test, which was good to see. Let's see, 40-yard dash, 4.33, 94th percentile. Vertical jump, 38 and a half inches, 82nd percentile. Broad of 126, which is the 80th percentile. And bench press, but who cares about that? 11 reps. We don't have to even get into that. But a guy who just kind of bursts on the scene this year, had a really quiet first 2 years compared to what he did this year, leading the nation in touchdowns. What do you necessarily like in Brian Thomas Jr.?
Well, I mean, first off, like you said, he's an elite athlete, and the testing is back, like in-game speed, and the testing backs that up. And as anyone can tell, or as you may notice, I'm talking about in-game speeds a lot here, and you can thank Puka Nacua for that. Puka Nacua was a guy I was pretty low on, and I missed on it. And I'm not saying I should have hit on it, but hearing how the Rams really found him and used in-game speeds to kind of help with their process there, I've made the effort to learn from it. And you see he's got the in-game speed that's verified 21 miles per hour. It's pretty much on par with other guys we're seeing. So he's a good athlete. He's got really long frame. He's got a good catch radius. And one thing he does that I really, really like to see is when someone is trying to physically press him, and what I mean by that is the defensive back is lined up close on the line of scrimmage to him, and they're trying to get their hands into his chest, into his frame, and really physically stop him from getting into his route. He's pretty actually good at taking his hands and swiping and being strong and getting off of that fast. That's something that not a lot of guys are actually that great at, especially when the defender is into their frame already. Like, you'll see people get into his frame and he's still able to take his arms and swipe them off. So I really, really, really like that, to be honest. And he shows some good ball tracking, and he had a great year, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd
But
say.
yeah, but some of those technical things he's still working on. I want to say the story is he's only been playing football since like his sophomore year of high school, so that's 6
I
years.
think it's something sophomore or junior, one of those two.
Yeah, so he's still really refining his technique, and he's still becoming a better route runner. So that's something that, like we said, like that's something that's teachable. So it may not be a big issue for a lot of teams, but he's just not as polished as some of the other guys we have in this class.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'm just gonna hit on your shades of Martavis Bryant. I love it. That's the thing with Brian Thomas. He's really smooth. He's really fast, and a lot of the routes he run were just really go routes or deep crosses. That's really all he specialized at. And we've seen other guys do that as well. But and he did it at an elite level this past year. I just don't know. I don't want to bank on him learning the route tree. I think he's going to be a great like space eater, 9 route runner, just a guy who is just get on the field and go. Like Martavis Bryant was similar to like Deshaun Jackson. I know they're different players, but kind of like what he did at the wide receiver position. And that's just my worry with him is just I'm not sure how much the routes are going to come because he isn't a big yak guy either, in my opinion. Like he wasn't really getting yards after the catch. Most of his balls were deep balls, and I just think he's going to be an elite like space eater, a field stretcher for a team, a guy who's like a number two, possibly a number three. But I personally just don't see the one. This probably starts by hot takes, because he's not as high as other guys are, and I personally take a couple guys over him that other people won't. And truthfully, he's probably going to get drafted as wide receiver 4. That's been the consensus, I'd say. Potentially, yeah, I agree. And there's a couple guys that could jump him, especially after the combine. But I personally, he's I think my wide receiver 6. I think right now, maybe 7. I'd have to double check, but he's not locked into that 4 spot, and I know he's not 4 or 5. So that's gonna be my like first hot take. Is just I think he's gonna be a really good NFL player. I just wouldn't use a first round pick on Brad Thomas.
He's not my wide receiver 4. I'll say that much. But I don't definitively want to say I won't use a first round pick on him because I have a second round grade on him, as you saw. But
yeah,
I've said this before. I don't necessarily give out 32 first round grades, so there's a good chance that he may still be like a top 32 player for me once positional value is weighted and everything like that. It's tough. I kind of agree. Like I don't necessarily see a guy that's I don't feel confident that he's a number 1 wide receiver, but I don't necessarily think it's out of the realm of possibilities, especially depending on landing spot. Because someone we've already talked about here, like Julio Jones, was not a great route runner. He's obviously a different physical freak, but he wasn't a great route runner coming in, and he really developed that and learned that, and that's what allowed him to become the elite guy he was. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard right now, yes, but say he lands in a spot with, say he lands at like Tennessee and like he gets to learn from DeAndre Hopkins for a year or something like that, and Calvin Ridley's there too, who's a really good route runner.
Yeah,
we may see some good development.
Possibly, yeah, and it's the ceiling play on that for Brian Thomas. But I personally, I just don't see it. I like a couple guys more than him, including this next guy, who is also a consensus above him already. But he's possibly one of 3 wide receivers from Washington that'll get drafted. However, he kind of stands out amongst the rest of them. That's going to be Odunze. He's a 4-year starter as a Husky, totaling 3,200 yards and 24 touchdowns. Added 40 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. A lot of his work, again, came the last 2 seasons with Michael Penix Jr. at quarterback. He did test, and he did show off his skills at the combine, so that was good to see. He came in at, 6 feet 2 7/8 inches, weighing 212. So that's going to be 77th and 75th percentile at the wide receiver position. So that's good to see. Hands, 9 1/4. Arm length, 32 1/4. Those are going to be, pretty average. 40 percentile and 59th percentile each. So as far as his arms and hands, more average than his actual height and weight. But he did test 4.45 40. 39-inch vertical jump and 124-inch broad jump. So pretty good things. The thing he did the best was his 20-yard shuttle at 4.03. What's up? He's at 91st percentile athlete. So he's consensus wide receiver 3. He's my wide receiver 3. How far away, in your opinion, is Rome Odunze from Malik Nabers?
Far. He's my wide receiver 3, but he's pretty far away from me. He's not close. And I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to, dog on Rome here. like he's got a first round grade, which is great in its own right. But there is zero chance I would draft him over Nabers. So I just want that on the record. And
I
then, and
agree
might
as
be
well.
wrong.
I've seen it too. I see him. Rome's a weird one because a lot of people love him and they would take him as like the wide receiver two of this draft. Then other people just don't see it and think he's overrated and they wouldn't even draft him in the first round. I think both of us are more level headed and we're both in the middle where we're definitely taking Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers over him, but he's still at least for me 100% a first round draft pick, and I would use a pretty high one as well.
Yeah, I would as well. Especially, if you need a wide receiver. I don't necessarily see, we were talking about it with Brian Thomas. I don't necessarily see a surefire number one wide receiver here, but I see a guy that I am confident is going to be a productive wide receiver for it, whoever drafts him. So that's the thing, is he's got such a high ceiling for me that it makes it okay for me to feel comfortable taking him somewhat high. The big things for me are, though, like, I think he's got a great release package. He's able to get off the line pretty well, but that's where he really separates, is those releases. I don't see him pull away later in routes after the stem, which is concerning to a degree, which is why that's my biggest weakness for him. But one of the things like that for his profile that really nagged on me was his contested catch rate in 2022 was bad, and like I think it showed up plenty in film. Like that's why preseason over the summer he was not even the top rated receiver on his own team for me. And this year he obviously pulled out an elite year with contested catches. So it's like, who are we really getting? Are we getting this guy that is winning contested catches at like a 60% clip, or are we getting the guy that was winning it at like a 20% clip? But I have he's a strong receiver. He's a good athlete. In a lot of ways, he gives me like N'Keal Harry vibes, but he's a better athlete than N'Keal Harry was. That's the key, though, right? Because N'Keal Harry
Yeah, I
didn't
was gonna say.
separate, and like all his catches were like contested catches.
Yeah.
So, and then he ran like a 4.5, like almost 4.6.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like cool, and then obviously it didn't work out well for the Patriots. Here, like Rome is kind of like that, and I get those vibes, but I recognize that Rome is much better athlete, so I'm not going to make a direct comparison there at all.
Yeah. No, I can see that, and it's the funny thing because I had the same kind of negative. It's just he doesn't separate. He's not very twitchy. He has that long speed, but he doesn't have that short area speed to like create that separation. So he has to rely on that contested catches, and we've been through that before with guys who don't necessarily create a lot of separation. And it's like, how are they going to perform at the next level? Because I mean, there's some guys that I've been tricked on. Not really N'Keal Harry. I think I learned from my mistake previously with Kelvin Harmon and Hakeem Butler. I was kind of higher on them, and they couldn't really separate. And we see what they did at the next level. So I think Rome's a lot better. He's definitely a better athlete than them, as the percentiles I listed off earlier, and I think he's going to win. He's going to be a guy who's not necessarily an alpha receiver, but he could be a number one receiver on a team, on a championship level team as well, in my opinion. And it's just, I don't, it's hard to describe because I would use from 10 on, I'm okay with using it for Rome Odunze, even, Chicago at 9, potentially, needing a receiver if Malik Nabers doesn't land to him. But with Rome, yeah, it's a little bit worrisome that you're not getting a guy who's known to create that separation and be open. You're gonna have to either throw him open or he's have to make that contested catch. So he'll learn. He'll get the nuances of the route running, like we've mentioned. And I did want to touch on the David Boston comp because I'm not as familiar with David Boston. So let's hear it from him.
So David Boston's one of those guys for me that, like, playing Madden as a kid growing up, he was one of those wide receivers that always I struggled to defend against. Like, I always felt like, so there's two guys in Madden growing up that I felt like always would just dunk on me by the TPU. It was David Boston and Chris Chambers, who was an old Dolphins receiver. And so David Boston was like this big guy. You can see some of these clips here. He's just a big, strong receiver. They're very similar, height, weight, athleticism profiles, everything like that. And like when I saw that catch specifically, like that felt very Rome Odunze to me. So that, when I was really searching for the comps, and I saw like, he's making these catches like in not necessarily full on contested catch situations, but like the DB is kind of close to him. That's why I went with David Boston as the comp here.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it, especially a couple of those deep balls. He's a deep ball guy, an outside receiver. You're going to want him to run, 15, 20, 25 yards downfield, throw it up to him. And I think he's going to be able to do it at the next level. I'm just not as sold as I am with the other two receivers that we mentioned earlier in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers, but I still definitely do love Rome Odunze. But we'll move over to the last duo that we're going to talk about. Start with the guy who literally made headlines just a week or two ago at the Combine. That's going to be Xavier Worthy. He's a 3-year starter with the Longhorns, total 2,700 yards and 27 touchdowns at Texas. It did take him until year 3 to break 1,000 yards, which is a little bit weird because, he burst on the scene as a freshman. I think everyone kind of, was put on notice at his skills, but I didn't realize he only broke 1,000 yards once and it was only by like 75 yards. So it's a little bit odd to see, especially a guy with his elite athleticism. But yeah, it's just weird to see just that he didn't break 1,000 yards until this past season. And even then it was only by like 70, 80 yards. So definitely caught me off guard. He obviously went at the Combine.
I think contextually you look at it and you realize and remember that they had a younger Ewers, and before that they didn't have Ewers. And then and then Bijan and Roshan were there as well. And like that offense was, rolling through those guys a large bit. So I think contextually it makes sense. And like breakout age and production wise, like profile wise, it's still elite. So I wouldn't worry too much about the century mark.
If I remember right, I think his like breakout age is in like the 99th percentile. So
he has an elite breakout age for sure.
Yeah. And so at the Combine, the splits are just funny to look at, especially on the screen right here. Like his height, 5'11" and 1/4, 27th percentile, and his weight, 165, the first percentile. So he's extremely, extremely small. But you take it on the flip side, his athleticism, all in the 90 plus percentiles, including a 99 percentile 40-yard dash, because obviously he broke the record at the Combine. So he's literally the fastest man that we've ever seen at the Combine. So let's just hear some of the positives on Xavier Worthy, because I don't want to stick to just a John Ross. I don't want to fall into that again.
So
and I like my fast receivers. Like that's my thing.
So my thing with Worthy is that I'm fairly confident that he cut weight for the Combine specifically to break the 40 record. He weighed in officially at 165 for the Combine. I am willing to bet he probably plays about 10 pounds heavier, if not more. But the great news or the good news is that it does not matter overall in the grand scheme of things because he still has an elite in-game speed. He had the fastest verified time in-game this past season at 22.7. So despite taking into consideration cutting weight, he still plays at a very elite in-game speed. But yes, his frame is super skinny. But I think he's a better overall wide receiver than John Ross. That's the thing is John 100%. Ross was very much a like straight line speed, 9 route only type of guy. I think Worthy can run a more diverse route tree and be used in a more diverse way. Now, the issue is going to be, can the body hold up? Because even considering that he's going to play at like 175, maybe 180, whatever. Like, he's not getting up to like 200 pounds. He's going to be a skinny, smaller guy for his whole career. And that doesn't necessarily last that long in the NFL unless you're very, very good at avoiding hits. The only guy I can think of that's somewhat small that is very good at avoiding hits is Tyler Lockett.
That's hilarious. I want to stop you right there because I literally was pulling up because I was about to make a comment about him comping him with Tyler Lockett. He's obviously a more of a better athlete, faster, and just overall better athletic scorer in testing as Tyler Lockett. But that's who I was just thinking of when you were just mentioning those things. So I just had him on the screen.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett was a guy I did consider at one point for him. It's very hard to do like a comp for the guy that breaks all like records for speed and everything because the only other option that like will come to mind is the guy that was the previous one, John Ross, and I think he's a better overall player. And I ended up going with Hollywood because Hollywood was similar. I want to say he was maybe a little bit heavier, but not much. And Hollywood ran in the 4.4s, which is not, or maybe 4.3s, but he didn't run 4.2s. But they have that similar play style to them where, you know, they're more than just a straight deep threat, but they are very good deep threats still. And you can see that they can do more, but there's also this always underlying concern about, number one, their hands, and then number two, if their body's going to be able to hold up. And we've seen with Hollywood, like, his body doesn't necessarily hold up for a full NFL season, though, you know, every year.
Yep. And I mean, I know I joked around about it the other day in our group chat, and you kind of tried to correct me, but they also both have a issue that they both share. That's going to be drops. I know you don't necessarily believe Hollywood had drop issues, but I just remember just believing in him, especially I don't know about in college, but with Baltimore, you can't tell me he didn't have a drop issue.
No, he definitely doesn't have the greatest hands. I'm not. Yeah. I was only throwing out the number because I was trying to say more so that contextually. And, okay, so for context, we had the debate of Hollywood's rumored to be going to Kansas City once Need gets traded, and Taylor made the comment of, well, hopefully he can, you know, catch the ball. And I said, well, he's actually got a better career drop percentage than Tyreek Hill. But Tyreek Hill also has like the most drops in the NFL over like the last 5 years. He's just so elite at everything else that nobody cares about his drops.
That's the thing. You can, like, if Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, if they all have drop issues, I can live with that 100%. But with Hollywood Brown, if you have a drop issue, I can't live with that. So if Xavier Worthy is just going to follow like the Hollywood Brown path in career so far, like you have to fix your hands. You can't do that. But if you can step up a little bit, I'm not saying he could be in that Tyreek Hill tier of receivers, but if you can even get above the Hollywood and like get closer to that Tyreek Hill, I think you could do it. And it's going to be weird because he's going to shoot up draft boards. Just from that 40 alone. He's gonna be a first round pick, most likely. Late first.
We'll definitely go late first.
Yeah, I could see it. I don't know. I've gotten with these fast receivers. It started off strong for me with Tyreek Hill that first year of Dynasty and Dynasty fantasy football. And ever since then, it feels like I missed like on 3 guys before I hit a 4th guy.
I was just going to say real quick that, you know, speed kills in the NFL, and like, we get got by them. Like, you know, Henry Ruggs is a thing. John Ross is a thing. But then you also get guys like Deshaun Jackson, Tyreek Hill, those players that are great at it. So it's one of those things where you just can't teach someone that is that fast. So teams are going to take that early and hope they can hit on it. And if they don't hit on it, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I'm still going to roll with my fast guys. So we'll see how that goes in fantasy football. But we're going to transition over to his running mate, the guy you see on the screen, and a guy that I've been on the train with for a long time, bias acknowledged, and that's going to be A.D. Mitchell. 3-year starter, his first 2, of course, at the University of Georgia, which included touchdowns in every single college football playoff game he played in with the Bulldogs and helped us win back-to-back national champions. So, AD, We love you for that. His total numbers aren't necessarily eye-popping: 1,400 yards, 18 touchdowns across his 3 seasons. Injuries to his sophomore year at Georgia, and of course, everyone knows the Georgia offense. We don't necessarily try to get anyone a Heisman or run up stats. We're there to win the game and get out. So the talent is undeniable, but the stats just a little bit eye popping to not really recognize exactly how great he was at Georgia, because coming into his 3rd year, transferred over to Texas, moved back home, be with his little girl. All respect to him for doing that. He almost doubled all his stats at Texas, and it was still not even the greatest year that we've ever seen. So it's just funny to see that he nearly doubled everything at Texas his last year. But at the combine, he measured at 6'2", 1/4, 74th percentile, and 205, right at the 59th percentile. He did test, and man, he definitely woke up some folks that were sleeping on him, because 4.3, 4.40, 94th percentile, a vert of 39 and 1/2, and a broad jump of 136 inches in the 98th percentile. And you see on the screen a 9.99 RAS score. So I'll let you start, because obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased on AD, but let's just hear exactly what you see.
I don't like AD Mitchell as much as you do. I have him
rated highly. I know that.
I'm going to be completely blunt and honest about this guy. I have him graded highly. It's a lot of because I liked DK Metcalf as a player much more, but it's the DK Metcalf kind of thing where he's big and he's fast and you can't teach that. And so, he's big and he's fast and he's skilled and you can't necessarily teach that, which, DK was that kind of player to a degree. My thing that I don't like is that I think he takes a lot of plays off and runs, half-assed route more than half the time, and it makes it to where it's really hard for me to like him. So when you consider like he's got this first-round grade for me, and I don't expect him to ever live up to it, but I can't not grade him a first-round grade, all things considered. It's literally whoever takes him is just gambling on they're hoping that he can be motivated, they can motivate him, and that he'll give his effort on every play and be able to be a difference maker. But I don't have faith that he's gonna give that effort on every play, and that's my thing. Is if this guy's trying 100% every play, he'd be an elite receiver. He'd be a top 10 pick here. I don't think he tries every play. I think it shows, and he's maybe a first-round. He's probably a first-round pick, but he's not a sure thing. It's very hard. It's very, very hard to truthfully evaluate him and give him a grade that makes logical sense.
I mean, it's understandable. I now thinking when you mentioned it, I didn't really notice it when I was watching him again, but he does take some plays off when he knows he's not getting the ball, or if he knows he's just running a clearing route, or he's just taking up space. You can kind of see it. So I can understand that. However, my defense is when I'm watching AD Mitchell, obviously I don't think he's the top 3 receiver. He's my wide receiver 4 of this class though. And
he's mine too.
He's okay. So we're on the same page, except I'm just higher on him. I just can't put him above Rome. Just not yet. I feel like I'm too biased in that situation.
So let me put it this way. I have on there game speed lives up to measured speed.
And it does.
That's in reference to the plays that he's trying. Because it is very clear when he's not trying. And it's not, and it's definitely, yes, plays he's not getting the ball, and he knows that. But I think that's an excuse people are trying to use to excuse him. There are plays where I saw that he did get the ball and he ran his route half-assed, half speed. And it's either this guy's trying to do get it on timing with it. And if that's the case, either him or Ebers were way off timing, or he's being lazy on the play, which either way, I don't like it. So
that's fair. I mean, a red flag of anyone who isn't showing effort every single play is always going to be fair to
it's just criticize. So blatantly obvious when he's not trying on a play, because when he does try, he is so much faster than everybody out there, and it shows. It's very clear.
And it's just like when I watch him, I honestly get shades of like Marvin Harrison Jr. He looks very similar to me. Just his body control and how he contorts his body is up there with Marvin Harrison. It might be tied, in my opinion. Like it's just the things he can do, just the smoothness of those catches. A lot of those, a lot of them being for touchdowns. He has a nose for the end zone, and I do love that as well. Nose for big games. He, obviously showed up in every single college football playoff game he played in, scored a touchdown. So it's just with him, he didn't have the stats, but he has the athleticism, and I see it. And I'm using the next pick after Rome. That's just how I am with A.D. Mitchell. I just can't. I see off it, but I'm going to acknowledge that there's a little bit of bias in there. I will 100% acknowledge that for what he did at Georgia. So I just love AD.
His overall where I would feel comfortable drafting him if I'm an NFL franchise is going to come down so much to interviews and like the process that I'm not privy to as a regular person, if that makes sense. So like just from film and what I can see and what I know, I have this first round grade on him, but with this big red flag that scares me. If I get him into interviews and I feel confident that that red flag is not going to actually be an issue, I would be almost willing to take this guy top 10. But if this red flag feels like an issue after interviews, he's off my board.
Okay, but so like, we're a lot closer than you made it seem originally.
Oh yeah,
that's how I feel. Sure, I personally don't have the red flag as much.
I try to be like, I try to put things aside and be very very grounded with my grading, even if it's not necessarily what I really feel. And like one example of that is Malik Willis. Like Malik Willis was not my favorite quarterback in that class. I had him graded as the QB1. Sam Howell was my true QB1, but I ended up putting Howell at 2 because I recognized that like Malik had athletic traits that Sam could never have that, if developed would make him much more valuable. Obviously like that's the result of that is not necessarily something we're going to go into, but like AD, I'm not like, I don't throw this around lightly, and I would never actually like feel comfortable throwing this comp out unless he tried every play. But like when he's trying every play, like I get a vibe of like a Julio Jones type of player. Like he's that athletic of a freak with crazy size. And if I told you this guy tries every play and you're getting a Julio Jones, you're taking him early, right? So that's the thing. Yeah. It's like it's just so disappointing when you see a guy that's so talented with such rare traits, but he's not taking over the way that a guy should be taking over with those traits.
I can see it. I love AD. I love everything about him. Everything he can do. He seems, everything I've ever heard about him coming out of Georgia was he was down to earth. He's not, full of himself. So I respect him going to Texas, being with his family. So, all props AD. I would take you extremely high. You're my wide receiver 4. But that's going to wrap it up for the part 1 of this wide receiver group. It's crazy to think that all 6 of the guys we talked about could be off the board by pick, 25 even. It's an extremely deep wide receiver group. And there's even guys that we talked about that could even sneak into the first round as well. The sky's the limit for this receiver group. It might be one of the best that we've ever personally seen when all things are said and done. But go ahead and follow us on our social media platforms at empirical_scout. If you're listening to us on Spotify, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. And if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button below. For Taylor, I'm Taylor, and we'll see you next time.
And Chipper.
Peace. And Chipper. See you later.
1, 2.